Good evening. I'm Teresa Skubik, and this is Forum Daily for Tuesday, January 7th. As Liberal Party officials begin to chart a course of an expedited race to find Justin Trudeau's successor, potential contenders for Liberal leader and Prime Minister are weighing whether to join the fray. They include ex-central banker Mark Carney. The former governor of the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England issued a statement last night saying that he is encouraged by the support and he's considering his decision with family over the next few days. In the wake of Justin Trudeau's resignation, questions are being asked about the process that the Liberal Party will select a new leader. As it currently stands, non-citizens can join the Liberal Party and vote in the race, with the minimum age for membership being just 14 years of age. On top of that, membership for the Liberal Party have traditionally been free of charge, which could further complicate the process of selecting a new leader. Political strategist Anthony Kosh joined us to explain what is at stake.
So the thing that makes the Liberal Party of Canada a little bit different than any of their federal counterparts, neither the Conservatives or the NDPs, is that in their membership process, it's actually free to become a member of the Liberal Party. So if you want to become a member of the NDP, a member of the Conservatives, you actually have to pay. But not only do you have to pay, you can't do so with cash. It has to be with a credit card that bears your name, which means each and every single membership is traceable to a specific individual, and it's much easier to find. There's no guy like me going and signing up a bunch of my buddies without them really even knowing, and then voting on their behalf. So effectively, there's two components here. So it is true, and it's not just a Liberal Party problem, it's a problem that's faced across all parties in Canada. You don't actually have to be a Canadian citizen or even the age of majority to vote in a leadership election. The only requirement is that you be a resident of Canada, that you have be the age of 14 years old. Now, as we can see, while this poses potentially some problems in every leadership race, what's unique about the Liberal experience is that you don't need to pay anything. So effectively, like we said, and the fact that they're the incumbent party, we're ending up in a situation right now where the next Prime Minister of Canada will not be decided by Canadian electors at large, but potentially might not even be decided by Canadian citizens at all. We haven't seen anything obviously quite as substantial as a federal national leadership race, but this same problem has replicated itself a number of times in local nomination races in the Liberal Party, where you have busloads of people who are not even fully, or especially seniors, not even really aware of where it is they're being taken and what purposes they're being brought about, who are being instructed in no uncertain terms to support one candidate over another. Now, obviously, at the federal level, the size and scope of this would have to be much larger scale, but this is the key part. The next winner of this Liberal leadership race will become Prime Minister of Canada. So for any and all foreign actors, as malicious as they want to be, we're looking at this right now. This represents an absolute goldmine opportunity that pales in comparison to anything else we've ever seen in Canadian history. And it's been a hot button topic issue for a lot of people for a while now, but this is probably the single most egregious opportunity possible for people to quite literally choose the next Prime Minister of this country.
In response to Justin Trudeau's resignation, the leader of the Bloc Québécois told the press that regardless of who the leader is, the Bloc will vote to bring the government down.
What if there is something that is put on the table that the Bloc Québécois has been asking for, that a new Liberal leader decides to say, we would like your support in exchange for this?
We are beyond that. Now is time for an election, which I will understand that would be held after the Liberal Party has chosen a new leader. And there's nothing else to be taken into consideration at this point.
And NDP leader Jagmeet Singh echoed those same sentiments, saying this changes nothing in the political landscape and that the Liberals don't deserve another chance.
It is clear the Liberals have let down Canadians. We fought and fought the Liberals at every step, and we got as much as we could get out of them through our fight. It is clear they've walked away now. It does not matter who is chosen as the next Liberal leader. They have let you down. They do not deserve another chance. So as soon as there is a confidence vote, New Democrats will be voting against the government, and then we will have an election.
Justin Trudeau's announcement also generated much reaction from south of the border. White House spokesperson Karine Jean-Pierre told reporters aboard Air Force One that Mr. Trudeau was a stalwart friend of the U.S. She says that our two countries have worked closely together on issues facing us both, and that President Joe Biden is grateful for Mr. Trudeau's partnership. All right, stay tuned. Up next, Canada's premiers work to strengthen Canada's trade relationship with the U.S. After that, an update on Canada Post. Stay with us. We'll have more news right after the break. Conservative House Leader Andrew Scheer spoke to the press this morning, urging the federal Liberals to reconvene the House of Commons and have an immediate election.
So that's why Conservatives are once again calling for Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party to please, for the sake of Canadians' well-being, for the sake of those struggling families going through so much hardship. I mean, think of 1,400 tent encampments in Ontario. Life wasn't like this in Canada before the Liberals took office, and it won't be like this in Canada after Canadians vote them out. It's not too late. They can still do the right thing. They can call a carbon tax election so Canadians can vote for a new government, for strength and stability to weather our country through these challenging times.
Scheer also expressed that the Conservatives have major concerns about foreign interference and called on the Prime Minister to release the names of the officials listed in the foreign interference inquiry as either wittingly or unwittingly participating in foreign interference. He also accused Prime Minister Justin Trudeau of being weak in the face of Donald Trump's tariff threats.
You're right to point out that when a country has a position of strength, it's able to negotiate much better. And it's clear that Justin Trudeau has been personally very weak in dealing with the U.S. administration of both parties, by the way.
I'm asking about your colleague.
Of both parties. Justin Trudeau had to capitulate to Donald Trump the first time he was president. He then backed down to President Biden, failed to get an exemption on softwood lumber or Buy America, failed to get new energy exports to the United States. So Justin Trudeau has been incredibly weak personally, and he has put our country in a position of weakness by imposing a carbon tax on Canada when the United States doesn't have one.
Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew says work still needs to be done to strengthen Canada's trade relationship with the U.S. following Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's resignation. Mr. Kinew says there needs to be a united approach between the federal and local governments when it comes to pushing back against U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's tariffs proposal. He says that the leaders of the provinces and territories will hold the mantle for Canadians by appealing to U.S. trading partners on the importance of protecting jobs and the economy. Ontario Premier Doug Ford said, quote, "The problem is not Canada."
That we have a very strong group of premiers, 13 premiers, that are willing to stand up, take the lead, and our biggest threat right now is the threat from President-elect Trump, threatening tariffs. And you're next, and Europe's next, and the rest of the world's next. We're going to make sure that we use every tool in our toolbox to fight these tariffs. We need to onshore products from China. Canada is not the problem.
Okay.
The UK is not the problem. The problem is China. They're shipping in cheap products through Mexico, slapping a Made in Mexico sticker on it, and taking American and Canadian jobs, which is totally unacceptable.
However, Danielle Smith says it's now up to the premiers to negotiate cross-border trade in light of Donald Trump's recent tariff threats.
I believe it's up to myself, the other premiers, to make the case to the Americans ourselves in the absence of federal leadership. And so that's why I'm going to the inauguration. I'll be staying there for 4 or 5 days. I hope to be able to put forward the case that I made today about how we are the Americans' best friend and trading partner. We can provide the resources that they need to be successful, and that we are also their biggest consumer. We buy $293 billion worth of products from the United States, which is more than Germany, the UK, Italy, France, and Vietnam combined. So we shouldn't be in the line of sight of the U.S. president. So I would hope that we'll be able to make that case, but it is not helpful having so much uncertainty in who's going to be at the negotiating table. That's why I still think that there should be an election. Let's get that solved sooner rather than later so we can get on with these important discussions.
Ms. Smith is headed to the incoming president's inauguration on January 20th and hopes to reaffirm a case that Canada will remain America's best trading partner. She says that she also would have liked to see an election call following Mr. Trudeau's resignation. Canada Post has returned to full service levels for domestic parcels after a month-long strike brought deliveries to a halt around the holidays last year. But it says Canadians should still expect delivery delays of several days beyond its service standard for letters, bills, and statements. It's also continuing to work through international mail, and customers should expect delays for incoming international items. Mail started moving again last month after the Canada Industrial Relations Board ordered more than 55,000 striking employees back to work. All right, stay with us. Up next, we'll be turning to cases of humans infected with avian flu, both in Canada and the U.S. Stay with us. Forum Daily will be right back after these messages. Health officials in Louisiana say that the first U.S. bird flu death was a person older than 65 with underlying medical problems. The individual had previously been hospitalized with severe respiratory symptoms, believed to be due to contact with sick and dead birds in a backyard flock. They also said that a genetic analysis suggested the bird flu virus had mutated inside the patient, which could have led to the more severe illness. Since March, 66 confirmed bird flu infections have been reported in the U.S., but previous illnesses have been mild. And here in Canada, concern is on the rise over a case of a BC teen and the avian flu. Infectious disease experts say that the virus appears to be evolving, potentially making it more capable of infecting humans. Canadian health officials say a genome sequencing procedure showed 3 mutations in the 13-year-old's case, including genes mutated to facilitate viral entry into cells in the human respiratory tract and enable viral replication. The medical director of the Vancouver Infectious Diseases Centre, Dr. Brian Conway, says that the mutations uncovered in the viral genome sequence of the specimens collected from the teenager could be the key to it becoming infectious to humans. We were joined by Dr. Conway earlier to unpack this.
So avian flu is endemic in birds around the world, migratory birds. It spreads to flocks. So bird-to-bird transmission is very easy. We have to put down entire flocks when it does get transmitted, and this has occurred many times in British Columbia. And that's the main way that avian flu spreads. In the past few years, it has begun spreading to mammals. Mink is a good example. There's an outbreak in the United States in dairy cattle, and that's a bit new. So I think transmission to mammals means that the virus has changed to some extent and is now able to infect mammals a bit more easily than it used to. In terms of spread to humans, that was first identified way back in 1997 with the first cases of avian flu. It is unusual. There are under 1,000 cases worldwide since avian flu came to be recognized in 1997. It does not spread from humans to humans. That has not ever been documented. And spread from birds and more recently from mammals to humans is usually through direct contact, though in about 30% of cases, we don't identify the exact nature of the contact that occurred that may have led to the transmission. Well, it turns out that the most common symptom in human beings is what this young girl had, namely conjunctivitis, an irritation of the eyes that very much looks like a common pink eye, sometimes with a fever, sometimes with respiratory symptoms, a runny nose. And then it can progress to very serious disease involving the lungs, causing pretty severe pneumonia, especially in individuals with underlying conditions, and can be fatal. Over the course of the 1,000 cases or so that we know of, fatality is in the neighborhood of 30%, though we're not 100% sure that there aren't other cases that were much more mild. So that's probably an overestimate, but it can cause pretty severe disease. Tends to begin, as I say, with an irritation of the eyes, conjunctivitis. So the main concern is that the isolate from this 13-year-old had 3 new genetic changes or mutations that make the virus more likely to infect humans more easily. Now, whether those are mutations that occurred after she became infected, because the virus always changes, or whether these are changes that were present in the virus that she acquired and that birds or other animals are carrying could transmit to other humans, this is the greatest concern, that this virus will become more tropic to humans, will become more easily transmitted to humans as it has been to cows and mink. And then it could potentially eventually transmit from humans to humans. So I think the main thing that people can do is go get your flu shot, please, because if you get infected with human flu and avian flu at the same time, that could be a very bad thing and make the virus evolve more rapidly and make you more sick. So that's my first sort of recommendation. Second recommendation is if you have sort of pink eye that looks a bit more severe, or if you are getting flu-like symptoms, please consult a healthcare provider as soon as possible and explain to them any contact that you might have had with animals in the recent past so that the right tests can be done to evaluate what you have.
Manitoba has launched a new system governing teacher conduct, including an online registry. The public registry allows anyone to search by name and see whether a teacher has had their certificate suspended or canceled. It is similar to registries in Ontario and British Columbia. A new system for investigating complaints against Manitoba teachers is also in place, with a review process led by an independent commissioner. All right, stay with us. We'll have more news right after the break. A decade after gunmen stormed the offices of the newspaper Charlie Hebdo in a deadly assault, France paused to honor the victims and grapple with the evolving challenges of free expression and terrorism.
Elsa Kayat, Charles, Honoré, Bernard Maris, Mustapha Ourad, Michel Renaud, Finius, Georges Wolinski, Simon Fieschi, décédé le 17 octobre 2024.
President Emmanuel Macron and Paris's mayor led tributes at the sites of the attack, where 12 people were killed on January 7, 2015. The massacre, carried out by two brothers claiming allegiance to al-Qaeda, marked the start of a wave of extremist violence, pushing France to reassess its security priorities. A strong earthquake has killed at least 126 people in Tibet and left many others trapped as dozens of aftershocks shook the high-altitude region of western China and across the border in Nepal. Local authorities say that about 190 people are injured in Tibet on the Chinese side of the border, and many others are trapped in the wake of dozens of aftershocks. McDonald's is the latest U.S. company to end some of its diversity practices. The fast food giant cites a U.S. Supreme Court decision outlawing affirmative action in college admissions. McDonald's joins companies like Walmart, John Deere, and others rolling back their diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives last year. The company says it will retire specific diversity goals for senior leadership and plans to end a program encouraging diversity in suppliers' leadership ranks. Facebook and Instagram owner Meta said on Tuesday that it's scrapping its third-party fact-checking program and replacing it with a community notes program written by users.
So we built a lot of complex systems to moderate content. But the problem with complex systems is they make mistakes. Even if they accidentally censor just 1% of posts, that's millions of people. And we've reached a point where it's just too many mistakes and too much censorship. The recent elections also feel like a cultural tipping point towards once again prioritizing speech. So we're going to get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our.
Starting in the U.S., Meta will end its fact-checking program with independent third parties because expert fact-checkers had their own biases and too much content ended up being fact-checked. The Consumer Choice Center's Yael Osowski has more on the significance of the announcement and why it's limited to the United States.
So what this means is that there will no longer be this kind of third-party fact-checking regime that existed on different Meta platforms, whether it was Facebook or Threads or even Instagram. And instead of having people who will be physically working on content moderation, you're going to go to a community notes model where if people do see something that might be false or something that would go against community standards, people are able to add a kind of addendum to it, a note, and in that people can vote on it. And in a way, this is a way that you can actually give people more free speech. You're not having these concise rules that kick people off or perhaps have users, their accounts suspended because they said something wrong. or because the discourse went a certain way. So it's actually a very interesting move by Meta and just shows that we're kind of in a more free speech era. And the influence of Elon Musk and Donald Trump has really changed a lot of stuff in Silicon Valley and really in all tech companies. If we look at the other places in the world, there's just not going to be any way to do this without breaking the rules. The laws that exist right now in the European Union, either through the Digital Single Markets Act or the Digital Markets Authority, you're not going to have the ability to get rid of these moderation teams. These are actually required, particularly in Europe and also in some other countries. So while the community notes model will work very well in the United States, is very congruent to the US system, if you were to do that in a place like the European Union or even Canada with some different legislation that has been discussed, you would not be able to do so. So that's why the focus on this right now is the United States, but hopefully, we'll see a big change across the world that will allow a bit freer speech online, and at least Meta is taking a good first step.
I'm Teresa Skubik, and that'll do it for your look at national and international news for today. Remember, for more news on demand, you can always visit our website at thenewsforum.ca and make sure to follow us on social media. Good night, Canada.